there are two issues here. I mean, there's a tariff issue for Apple, and that would likely affect about 80% of Apple's revenues in the U.S. And the U.S. is about 30% of its business, so 25% of Apple's revenue, call it $50 billion, would be subject to a 10 or 25% tariff.
Right.
But I think the issue that many folks aren't really thinking about is what's the potential tit-for-tat response from China? Because ultimately, when Trump placed the first $50 billion in tariffs, China responded immediately. Then he put $200 billion in tariffs, and China doesn't import $200 billion. So they're trying to negotiate and say, hey, how can we reduce that tariff on the $200 million? Now, if the U.S. goes even further and raises the tariff to 25% or says we're going to include all these other categories, the question is, how's China going to respond? Could they try and disrupt Apple's supply chain in some way? Could they not authorize new phones for sales in the country? There are many things that China could do, and that could ultimately be even more devastating.
Ed, have you thought of all this stuff? Do you have questions? Do you want to be an expert, or do you want to be an expert interviewer of the expert?
I can do both, just like you.
I think you can.
I can do both, just like you.
Because you're Renaissance guy.
I think I agree with all the points there. I think the other thing to note is that the Greater China region is now the slowest growing region for at least year over year. In the September quarter, it was like the slowest growing region. I think right now Apple is facing this issue of everyone who have an iPhone everyone who want an iPhone already have one. So growth is just becoming that much harder. You still have the tariffs on it, makes it that much more difficult. People in the upgrade cycle, a lot of these upgrades are happening through sort of the Apple plan, where they sort of upfront the money for you and you're sort of paying on a monthly basis. That's what helps the average selling price go up. I don't see the vision. I don't understand in terms of the tariff war here how in any way, like if you give up on this, you gain something later. Intellectual property, those are things that they're trying to fight for. I don't see how Apple benefits in any of that kind of washout, because they already sell in China. It's not as if they don't have access to the China market. Another big part of the economy, the online economy, that what drives it is the App Store itself, which is another Apple invention. So I don't see how the tariffs ultimately can favor Apple if Trump wins something in this concession.
And ironically, Apple is deemed to be an importer into China as well. That seems unusual, because Apple manufactures the phones there, but they're in a bonded region, and effectively, from a transactional perspective, they export to Ireland, capture the low tax rate, and then import it into China, right? So ultimately, even if China just said we're going to match the tariffs, then effectively all of iPhones being sold into China would also be tariffed. And that's, before some of the other potential, political or business disruptive issues that China could take.